Mega Metroid podcast. All you Metroid fans, thank you for tuning in and listening. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined by Dakota Lasky, and this is almost a surreal episode. A lot of crazy stuff has been going on in the world the last couple weeks, but you know, we're gonna persist on with the podcast here, and hopefully you guys can use this as an escape from everything that's going on in the news and everywhere right now. So we're just gonna dive straight into some Metroid theories, news, anything that we can for the next couple of weeks here, just to get a little bit of a respite from all the bad vibes out there. So we're gonna be, here every week talking Metroid, and we're gonna be coming at you consistently with that. So with that said, Dak, how are you?
I am fantastic, Andy. Thanks again for having me on, and I'm looking forward to talking some more Metroid.
I always love talking Metroid with you. We had a great episode all about Metroid Prime 4 and what we want, and I am ready to keep that ball rolling and talk about kind of a weird idea that I had. But before we do that, I should give a little bit of love to our friends over at Metroid Database. Again, we thank them for helping promote the show. Really great guys. So check them out on Twitter, at Facebook, on Instagram. Make sure that you show them some love. They've been doing this. They're for Metroid fans by Metroid fans for as long as I can remember, like 1996 or something crazy. So definitely make sure that you check them out. Dak, I have a question for you.
All right.
Should Nintendo make a game starring Zero Suit Samus? And let me kind of set the table here for this question, because I want you, actually, how about this? Give me your initial, like, in a couple words or less, give me your initial response to that question.
I guess I have to ask you a question in response to your question. What do you mean by should? Like, on what criteria should they make this game? If you get what I'm saying, like, because how I'm looking at it is, should they do it because it'll probably increase Metroid popularity? Yes, 100%. Marketing standpoint, it makes a ton of sense. But the Metroid fan in me, like, I'm so starved for good Metroid, man, that, like, that's all I want. So it's like, to have something else kind of suggested to me as like not a replacement, or like that's the next thing or whatever it is, kind of falls flat for me. So that's, like, I guess, like the way I'll kind of intro, and we can go from there.
All right, so me setting the table here, you nailed it on the head. I suggest this question, or I pose this question as more of a marketing thing rather than, and you know what, I'm sure that any first party Nintendo game or second party Nintendo game is going to be good. It's going to have Nintendo polish, but I'm thinking, like, do they make this game starring Zero Suit Samus for basic marketing? Because if you look at the trend over the last couple of years, Zero Suit Samus has really been featured and marketed more prominently than Samus in her power suit, or I would say at least as much as Samus in her power suit. Of course, Zero Suit Samus is her own character in Smash. You have Zero Suit Samus icons for your Switch. It seems like, and I mean, cosplay, it isn't even close.
Right.
It seems like to me that it's really in short amount of time, it's as iconic a design as Samus' power suit. I feel like there is potential to exploit this and maybe make kind of like a spin-off series, but have this really appeal to the masses, because, especially in the last couple of years, I'm thinking to myself, like, does Nintendo really have like a great franchise starring a female character? And I mean, obviously Samus has been starring in Metroid for forever, but to the casual fan, under the power suit, you didn't really know that until Zero Mission, and you kind of broke away from that. So, and maybe I'm just overlooking some series that has that criteria, but to me, I'm just like, okay, well, people are kind of already leaning into this version of Samus anyways. Mm-hmm. should Nintendo just go with this, like go all the way with this, and make a game starring Zero Suit Samus?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea inherently. Like, why not capitalize on that? People know who Zero Suit Samus is from Samus or from Smash, and has a lot of appeal that a robot-looking power suit doesn't. That being said, I was thinking about this earlier when I was looking at the topic, and I was like, think about Fire Emblem. Like Fire Emblem it made some big changes in terms of like its presentation. Obviously, has more of like an anime feel to it. Has a lot of like more drama between like the characters. Is really kind of exaggerated and has a lot of more social aspects to it, features wise. Um, but at its core, it's still really Fire Emblem. That being said, it is a big part of like the resurgence of Fire Emblem, that kind of different style. So I think about that for Metroid. I'm like, that'd be great if we had a game like the new Fire Emblem games where, Awakening comes out, whatever it is, and a big insurgence of, a surge of fans come through because they like this, the anime style and all the people and the characters and all that, blah, blah, blah. But at its core, it's still Fire Emblem with a Zero Suit Samus game. While it could be a game that could bring a lot of people into Metroid, a lot of new fans, it wouldn't be a traditional Metroid. So they wouldn't be getting brought in on Metroid. They'd be getting brought in on this new, not Metroid, right? It wouldn't be like it's it kind of isn't really introducing them into Metroid. It's kind of introducing them to something that isn't really Metroid. Because when you think about it, Zero Suit Samus is very much a Smash creation. Like Metroid doesn't
Right.
reference Zero Suit Samus like specifically. Like they call it Samus with her Zero Suit. It's her Zero Suit. Like Zero Suit Samus is the moniker that Smash came up with, and is really emphasized in Smash. And it also doesn't really make sense how Zero Suit Samus is better than regular Samus, but whatever. Whereas in Metroid, it's kind of not as really pushed harder. I liked what they did in Zero Mission. It had that kind of little taste of it, but it's hard because it does. I don't know. Like, would it be as successful as like the newer Fire Emblem games? Analogous to that. Like, would Metroid really get a big push if Zero Suit got a game? Would it kind of be considered another spin-off that isn't really needed? Like, Metroid fans really do want a lot of new Metroid that is traditional Metroid or the Metroid they know from Prime or whatever, and to introduce this newer kind of, Metroid, I feel like might give a bad taste in their mouths. I don't know. It's in some ways how you look at it. You look at it one way, and it's like, ooh, like this is a good idea. Like this would be great. But then you kind of tilt it a little bit. The light in the light, it kind of looks different now, and you're like, ah. But still, there are some side effects. There are some some consequences. There are some potential drawbacks to doing this, and it seems like it could be just as risky as it is a potential good idea.
Yeah, and that's kind of the conundrum in posing this question, and why I thought it was such an interesting topic, actually, because at a base level, you're just like, of course, this would probably sell, really great. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. A lot of guys would probably be down to play a game with a hot girl as your main protagonist, especially an iconic character like Samus. And on the flip side of that, your female audience is going to be like, hell yeah, like I'm playing as this awesome and empowered female character. Sign me up. And I think that the Zero Suit version of that really gets that across. But
Hmm.
my conundrum with this is kind of like the same wavelength as yours, but a little from a different angle. So I just feel like for whatever reason, I have no doubt that if Nintendo made this game and it was good, which I am sure that it would be, that it would sell very well. I think that it would sell maybe better than any Metroid game previously has. Not that Metroid games are known for their amazingly strong sales, but especially on the Switch, where everything Nintendo is churning out just seems to turn into instant gold. It seems to me that this would be this would get across to a large audience of people, and potentially, like you said, people playing Metroid for the first time. My question or my hesitation is a little bit twofold here, because my first kind of hesitation is like, okay, would Metroid fans like to play a game as Zero Suit Samus? And I think that you can say, like, if it's done well, I bet you they probably would. But I mean, you're totally right. It's not a traditional Metroid game, and we'll kind of speculate about what kind of game this could be in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it wouldn't be a traditional Metroid game. I think we can all agree on that. So my fear almost is that, okay, let's say that Nintendo releases this Metroid game, and it's really successful, but it's not your traditional Metroid game, do then they start leaning into that formula, and that's kind of now it's almost like what Prime did to the 2D Metroids. And now it's kind of this is the direction we want to go with the Metroid series because this is what's proven to sell units. So a lot of interesting hypothetical questions. I think it's maybe not as easy to pick apart as it first presents itself, because I think on a base level you think of the idea and you're like, of course that absolutely works. But then you start eating some of the meat on the bone and you're like, is this as good as I thought it was?
Yeah, it's definitely a question of like, if this is like the successful way or a successful Metroid game, are they just gonna keep making? They're gonna make Zero Suit Samus 2 instead of Metroid Prime 5 or Metroid 5 or whatever, right? That's definitely the
Right.
fear I'm sure people would have, and I think that's why like it really depends. And this I think goes for pretty much any Metroid spin-off game. It all depends on when you release the game. So like, if they came out and they didn't announce Metroid Prime 4, but instead they announced Metroid Zero Suit Samus story, right? And it was some Metal Gear Solid or Bayonetta style game or whatever it is. People would be really tight because they want Metroid Prime 4, they want a traditional Metroid. But let's say the game came out after Prime 4, after Prime 5, or right around then, where people have access to new traditional Metroid, all of a sudden having another option, an extra, like, oh, I'm eating my entree, but ooh, yeah, I'll certainly take a nice, slice of buttered bread on the side for sure. That sounds great. But if you just get served buttered bread at the restaurant, you're gonna be like, well, I like buttered bread, it's great, but that's not what I want for the full meal. I'm here for the full thing. So I think timing is big. Federation Force is the prime example of this because I don't think inherently Federation Force is a bad game. It's not a great Metroid game, ultimately, though I don't really think it's a bad Metroid game either. But it's certainly not a horrible game like Other M is. Had Federation Force come out when like Hunters came out or when Pinball came out, right? When those games, when you have the heyday of Metroid, when they can release Metroid really anything and it'll be good, people are more conducive to getting extra Metroid stuff. I think as long as you're getting traditional Metroid, stuff like this, a Zero Suit Samus kind of game, would be great, would be awesome. Because I don't mind having another kind of style of Metroid. Yeah, sure, make 2D classic Metroids and make the Metroid Primes, and then make these third-person Zero Suit Samus games. That'd be sick. I think that'd be awesome, as long as you're hitting on all cylinders at all times. But if you're just giving us this new kind of Metroid, I'm gonna be like, well, yeah, this is all great, but I really do want the traditional as well. So I think timing really plays a big part into it, and so I think it's hard to also judge this because I think inherently doing a kind of game like this, whether it's like some cool stealth game or some big crazy action adventure over the shoulder thing or whatever it is with Zero Suit, somehow ever it would work, I think is not inherently a bad idea, but it really depends on when people are getting it. Because if I'm getting it before Metroid 5, I'm like, all right, like, come on, like, I really want to see the story progress, and I'd love to see it how Metroid is usually presented, and I feel like a lot of people feel the same way.
I agree. And part of me thinks that maybe this could be like the third leg of the Metroid franchise. You have your classic kind of series, you have your Prime series, and you have this new Zero Suit Samus series, because I think it could be successful.
Yeah.
I agree with you about Federation Force. That's a game that I think being called Metroid Prime did not do that game any favors.
Yeah.
If anything, it really hurt that game.
Yep.
So, I mean, I do agree timing is key. To me, it's just like, it's a fascinating proposal because on the flip side of that, do you try and like do, I guess they call it in TV, like a backdoor pilot where let's say that Metroid Prime 5, or you know what, maybe even let's say Metroid Prime 4 comes out and you can switch between regular Samus and Zero Suit Samus, and you kind of get your hardcore fans acclimatized to playing as Samus, not in her power suit. I don't know how you would do that change really in a first-person perspective game, but let's just say that somehow they did. You could maybe try and do it that way, but I think that would bring down the Prime games to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's so interesting to think about.
I think the biggest issue with it is we're trying to like we're conflating Smash Zero Suit and Metroid Zero Suit because they are completely different characters. Smash Zero Suit is able to fly around essentially, is super strong, and is as strong a threat, if not as stronger a threat than Power Suit Samus. In Metroid, it's very, very obviously implied and executed that Zero Suit Samus is way weaker than Samus wearing her armor. So I think the problem with, like, for example, having her switch between her Zero Suit and her Power Suit is, why would she ever do that? Her Zero Suit in all categories, other than size, I guess, and maybe speed, I guess, slightly, until she's running with, like, and now she's at super speed and running faster than ever, Zero Suit ever could run. Um, with the speed booster, you think, why would she ever want to be in Zero Suit? The whole point of the Zero Submission thing is that she's in her Zero Suit. She can't do anything except stun people and run away. So, like, would it even make sense to have, like, as much would be a cool idea, like, would it even make sense to have this third kind of game starring Zero Suit where she's Bayonetta or she's Solid Snake kind of character? It wouldn't really make any sense, because in the context of Metroid, like, the second she gets hit by a space, a space pirate energy blast, she's dead. That's the context. She has no armor, so it really wouldn't even work. And Metal Gear Solid, it makes sense because he's a human in a human world. Samus, as much as she is augmented, still is human at the end of the day, for the most part. Like, that's why, again, like, going to Halo, Master Chief is an augmented human under the armor, but he would never willingly take off and put on his armor all the time to get an advantage. There's no advantage to not having his armor. That is the advantage. So it's either having it or not. So I think that kind of puts a huge, like, wrench in this kind of potentially doing this style of game, because in this, in the sense of Metroid, it doesn't really make much sense. In Smash, it does, which is why I wish we had Subspace. Like, if we had an actual campaign in Smash, we'd get our fix of, like, that cool, crazy Smash Zero Suit playing in a campaign. But unless they did it in that Zero Mission kind of way, where it is, like, stealth and she can't really get hit and, like, whatever, like, she's, like, at a big disadvantage, which is what they did in Zero Mission. Otherwise, I'm not really sure how it would work.
Right. I definitely hear what you're saying about, like, the logic. I'll first start off and say, like, let's assume, or let's just hypothetical say that Metroid Prime 4 or 5 has the ability to switch between Samus Power Suit and Zero Suit Samus. I definitely agree. The logic in that is, like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
That being said, I think you could create a scenario where you have to do that, potentially via traversing the land, or
all right, I'll put you on the spot. What would you do, like, to make that make sense? Put you on the spot.
I mean, you could do a bunch of things. You could have something come where, like, the space pirates have found a way to detect Sam's power suit, or they've done something where you can't use the power suit, and if you use it, you are going to get spotted, and if you're spotted, they'll murder whoever they have held hostage, or something like that. But, like, you could create a scenario. Like, I don't think that there's a problem doing that.
Right.
I do think that, like you said, the one of the joys of Metroid is slowly acquiring these power-ups, and towards the end of Metroid, you feel like this unstoppable being that can do anything. So, like, I think that if you have to switch between your suits, then that's obviously lost.
Yeah.
So that being, but I do wonder if, like, that would be the way to, like, maybe soft introduce Zero Suit Samus, and if people are receptive to that, make a new game. On the flip side of that, I had jotted down Metal Gear Solid or Bayonetta as two kind of inspirations for how this game could potentially work.
Right.
I do think that you can write whatever scenario you want,
Yeah.
right? Like, Samus can definitely be acrobatic. Maybe if we're in a Zero Suit Samus game, she doesn't necessarily have to be going up against monsters and space pirates,
Right.
but she could be going up against, like, maybe some
It'd be
Galactic
more to
Federation
scale.
soldiers. Yeah, something. Yeah, exactly, something like that. So, like, you could write a scenario. If I'm a big fan of the Metal Gear Solid games, and that kind of stood out to me because of the obvious the stealth gameplay of Zero Mission.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I would really love to see a game starring Samus in that kind of presentation, where, you are weaker. You typically only have, your stun gun. Maybe you could incorporate some of the stuff from Smash Bros, although I hope not the heal bullets, because those are awful. um but the other thing too, I mean, like, if you really wanted to go wild, you could create, like, a Bayonetta kind of game where you can pull off some pretty incredible combos and stuff like that. And then if you were gonna do that, I mean, like, I think that you would want to lean into all the ridiculous stuff that Samus has over in Smash. Speaking of heal bullets, I mean, Bayonetta has heal bullets. So
Well, but
I
then like it kind
do
of like again it kind of brings up that question of like, okay, but then if there is an advantage to being Zero Suit and all of a sudden she's some crazy ninja, then why wouldn't she be Zero Suit more
right.
often? And now it's like
Yes.
now it throws that whole wrench of it now again, like I was saying earlier, like when you were talking about or last time we are talking about um the screw attack and stuff like that in the 3D Metroid games. Um so I don't know. I feel like she like to have all that stuff like if she all of a sudden doesn't have it, it doesn't make sense when she had like the a shine or whatever kind of ability in the previous game and the ones that follow it. Whereas again with Zero Suit Samus, why would it make sense of her that she's not doing all this stuff in the previous games and the games that follow, but in this game all of a sudden she's some crazy ninja or super spy as Zero Suit? Why wasn't she doing that in Zero Mission? Why wasn't she doing that in any other potential situation where that would have helped? um, that's
Right.
another kind of thing but again, if you're not gonna like go at it as like from making sure it makes sense logically, I think I like that Metroid keeps things pretty logical for the most part and doesn't kind of like have things randomly happen for seemingly no reason for the most part. So I feel like that would be one of those things where like, oh my god, Zero Suit is by herself without the armor. She's this crazy badass warrior like without it. Like where has this been the whole time? And then you play the next game, you're like, oh, I can't do any of that stuff because it doesn't. At the time, that wasn't a thing. So I don't know. I think that's a big wrench in the gear there for me.
I disagree. I
Okay.
think that you can create a scenario where Samus can be powerful in her Zero Suit form and it's not awkward. I mean, like, yes, if you go up against space pirates, then obviously that's gonna raise some eyebrows because Samus couldn't go up against them before. But I mean, to that's not what I'm hung up on more so. Like, you can create any scenario that you want. If she's fighting other humans, I can absolutely buy that she is, a trained enough warrior to be able to take some of them down. I could totally buy that
Right.
she knows how to fight.
Yeah.
Do I want to see her fight Ridley as Zero Suit Samus or Mother Brain? That might be stretching it a little bit,
Yeah.
a lot of it even really. But scenario wise, I think that you could do it. I do. Now that I'm saying it though, like I wouldn't like that kind of presentation of Samus in Bayonetta as like this crazy ass kicker. I would far more like or enjoy more kind of the stealthy presentation or gameplay aspects because I think that was actually like a really strong part of Zero Mission because it was such a it was so different. You're not used to Samus being weak or Samus being vulnerable. You're used to just being able to blast your way through these giant monsters and have your way with them. So I thought that was kind of refreshing. I guess like I said though, my big hangup is I would be scared of the game's success because I think that it would be a really cool side game, but like if it was if this was the most successful Metroid game, and saying that, I don't think that it will be. I think Prime 4 is going to do really well, but if this was really successful, then obviously we'd see more of them. And if it's good, then that's great. But I wouldn't want Metroid to morph into something else versus what it is right now, if that makes sense.
No, that definitely makes sense. I think at least at the very least, I think the Metroid Prime version of Metroid is pretty safe because Nintendo doesn't really have another kind of first person shooter. Like that's Splatoon, that's a third person shooter. It doesn't have another kind of first person shooter. So I think we'll always kind of not always, but like if Metroid's going to survive, I think the Prime will be continue to see Prime games. That being said, if a new kind of Metroid brings a ton of people in and that's what did it and more people want that and that's like kind of where Metroid goes in the future, then that's where it goes. At the end of the day, if that's what's more successful and it might be different, but hey, what if it ends up being better than what we end up playing in the past? It could be. Um,
Yeah, I mean, totally. And
yeah.
my hope is that okay, we have a game starring Zero Suit Samus. A lot of people are attracted to her for different reasons. A strong female protagonist, the fun gameplay that we're kind of dreaming of in a Metal Gear Solid kind of esque realm. My absolute, like, the best case scenario that I would have is like, okay, so people love this game. Check out Metroid Prime. Check out Super Metroid, available on the Switch, Nintendo Online. That would be the ultimate goal, I think,
Right.
in the best case scenario.
Yeah, I mean, if this game brings in a ton of Metroid fans, I don't care if it's a card game. Bring them in, however you can bring them in. Like if people are more interested in Metroid as a result, and that means more Metroid games get made, I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing, to be honest, because it can't be worse than what Other M was. So I feel like sure, go for it. Why not? As long as it makes sense, as long as it works, I think that's fine. I'm not necessarily that scared if it like replaces what we know of Metroid now, because my favorite kind of Metroid, I love I love the Prime series, and I feel like that's gonna stay because it really kind of fills a niche that Nintendo doesn't really have in other kind of IPs. Whereas sure, like Metroid is its own thing, Metroidvania, but it is a 2D platformer or like action adventure kind of game, which Nintendo does have, right, in spades in a lot of ways. So, and also that kind of style game isn't as popular as like a first person shooter or as a third person action game or whatever, which Prime and a Zero Suit, hypothetical Zero Suit sub series could be or whatever. That being said, do I want it as like a whole game? I don't know. If I could, I liked the Zero Suit mission, but like if that was the whole game, I wouldn't have wanted to really play it. I like that it was its own thing. I would love if, like, yeah, maybe they create some scenario where for some reason Samus can't access her suit or can't power it up or whatever explanation for the game is, or how her suit works at the time or whatever, because it's a video game and it changes all the time or whatever. And she has to like do some stealth up. Maybe she's like in deep in enemy territory or like with some really like high up people, and she has to like really kind of like stealthily and like civilly like leave, but like and doesn't have access to her suit, whatever. That'd be cool. That's really, I do agree that they can create scenarios, but I don't think it's like super flexible. I don't think there are so many options where like you can create like a really really compelling long enough story where like it really makes sense that for some reason she doesn't have access to her suit the entire time, when in the past we kind of her accessibility to her suit is almost unquestioned in almost every scenario. Like she almost seems like very accessible to it. It's only in Zero Mission where she doesn't have it, and that whole mission is about regaining control of her suit. This game I feel like would
Mm-hmm.
have to be about that. And what is she upgrading in the meantime? You brought that up earlier. Like one of the big things with Metroid is eventually you're becoming this huge tank, but in this game, her goal would be to what? Get her power suit? Like that's her base form. Like she wouldn't even be getting anything that's particularly that grand. If she's fighting humans, okay, but she could fight humans with her power suit too. You could create a scenario where like, oh, she can't do that. Maybe she's in a city. She doesn't want to go around murdering other humans or hurting them. That'd be crazy or whatever. But then again, like, do I want to play a whole game of that? Um, Maybe I do. I don't know. I think another comparison again. I bring up Halo because I love that series, but I think a lot about like Halo ODST, right? ODST, that's the first time you're not playing as Master Chief. You're playing as an ODST who's more or less a regular human Marine. He's not literally a Marine, I know, but he's not a Spartan either, right? So you're way more vulnerable to stuff like the aliens that in Covenant forces that Master Chief can just slice through butter with. Otherwise, it take a lot more for you to deal with as an ODST because you're just a regular human. I like that. But if the whole Halo series was like that, I don't think necessarily enjoy it as much. I love that little side series, but I don't think I'd want a whole series of it. I think if that makes sense. I like it in smaller doses. I think that's why the Zero Mission part was so strong and worked well. And I don't know if I want a whole game. But then again, hey, if it's a really good game, I don't know. Who knows? But I think if
Yeah,
you see what I'm
and I
saying,
mean, yeah, and if you, to be clear, like if you made a game starring Zero Suit Samus, you wouldn't have that typical Metroid item progression. Like I feel like this would be a more straightforward, like stealth action game, like akin to Metal Gear Solid 2.
yeah.
Or it would be more straightforward, like level by level basis, as like a Bayonetta. I don't think that you would have the formula that Metroid employs, and I think that you shouldn't have that, because if you're gonna do a game starring Zero Suit Samus, make it distinct, make it unique, make it its own thing.
Agreed.
Um, I'm kind of with you. Do I? Do I want a game starring Zero Suit Samus? I'm not sure. Do I think that it would be good for marketing purposes for Metroid? Yes. Would I want it to be like the sole? Would I want the series to kind of shift and the focus is like, okay, the Zero Suit Samus presentation is now number one, Prime is number two, and Classic is number three.
Mhm.
I wouldn't want that.
Yeah.
But again, like we kind of said in our first episode when talking about Metroid podcasts, like a high tide raises all ships. So
For
I
sure.
would also be hopeful that anything that can bring people to Metroid
Yeah.
would be is a good thing. But it was just I was thinking about this the other day while I was driving home, and I don't know. I thought it was so interesting because my reaction initially is like, of course, that'd be awesome. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, well, actually, I don't know. I don't really know. Like, I was kind of thinking like you, like, why would Samus not have her power suit? And then it was almost like I had an angel and a devil on my shoulder and then I was just like, okay, well, they can create a scenario where she doesn't have it. That's not a big deal. Don't get hung up on that. And I was kind of going back and forth. So I was really just really curious to hear what another diehard Metroid fan kind of thought of this because it seems like there's I don't know. It seems to me, and maybe I'm just kind of imagining this, but it seems like the hardcore Metroid fans maybe wouldn't be in favor of this.
I mean, I was gonna say on the other hand, like part of me doesn't. I don't want like to give up what is the essence of Metroid just to get fans in, right? Again, going back to what I said earlier, like they
Right.
didn't like Fire Emblem plans. I don't think really had to give up too much of like the essence of what made Fire Emblem to get like a big surge in like new interest in the games and whatnot because the games are changed in a certain way. But yeah, I don't want to lose what makes Metroid Metroid. I hate when like games are changed to appeal to like a larger audience, but you kind of lose what makes the games good in the first place. I
And you could argue, a lot of people argue that Breath of the Wild did that for Zelda. I know a lot of Zelda
yeah,
fans
no,
that think Breath of the Wild is a great game, but a bad Zelda game.
no, I mean it's definitely weak in places that Zelda is usually strong. I think like one of the biggest things of that is like dungeons, for example, which were certainly one of the weakest parts of Breath of the Wild, I think. And of course, I'm someone who comes from the camp of not Metroid. Wow, Majora's Mask is my favorite Zelda game. So I love that very atmospheric and the aesthetic of that, but also it's very story driven and like has that kind of setting that's very sets it apart from other Zelda games. Whereas Breath of the Wild is kind of like an open sandbox, but it doesn't have like a whole bunch of it has toys in it, but like it is a big sandbox. It's not kind of focused and driven, which is what I love about Majora's Mask is that it's very focused. It's very kind of builds on what other Ocarina of Time did. That being said, I love Breath of the Wild too. So we'll see. Like I love both kinds, and I can learn to love both kinds of Metroid or three kinds of Metroid. That's certainly fine as long as I'm getting all kinds. So or whatever it is, or I have access to that kind of stuff or whatever. So again, if they can create a game, if I think the biggest hangout for me is as long as it makes sense, right? Like if the scenario in which they create Zero Suit's necessity of that being the main character, if it makes sense and it's not dumb, then I'm fine with it. I think that's my biggest hang up, right? I don't think it comes down to like a gameplay thing for me necessarily. If it makes sense in the story and because Metroid for more or less again like it makes a lot of the stuff like it makes sense. Continuity for more or less is pretty on point. It's not a series that kind of like throws continuity into the wind. So I would like it to really not like be something that they're doing just because like people like looking at Zero Suit and they want to make a game on that. Because to be honest, for me, like Zero Suit has no value really. Not that it has no value, but I like the power suits. I don't like Metroid because like Samus is like an attractive woman. She's an attractive woman. That's great, but that's not why I'm playing Metroid. And I'm sure that would go for most, if not a large majority of Metroid fans. Even though I'm sure that's a great part of it.
I
For
think you
people.
could probably say that for almost
Yeah.
all Metroid
So
fans.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
mean, let's also not kid ourselves with there's probably a contingent casual audience out there that's like, sweet, Zero Suit Samus, awesome.
Right, no, for sure. I'm definitely not disregarding that. I think like just as a fan, it's like, if someone's like, oh, a Zero Suit game, I'm like, Samus without her suit? Why? Like, why would you say? That's like again, like, hey, we're making this game about Master Chief, but he's not wearing his armor. You can see all his pecs, and he punches people. I'm like, I'm good on that. I'm just give me the suit. But hey, I shows a lot of people. I think there's a lot of potential with it, though. I think that's another thing about this too, is that not just like, oh yeah, there's great marketing potential. It could get new fans in Metroid. There is potential in how they could expand on like what worked well with the zero mission part of it, where it works well from just in Smash and whatnot, and how to make it realistic in Metroid for the context of this, what makes sense in that universe. There's potential. So
Right.
I would like, if they have a good plan, I'm definitely not someone who's going to shut my ears at it just because I might not necessarily want a Zero Suit game.
Maybe I'm just like a huge Nintendo fanboy and just have like this ridiculous blind faith, but like I feel like if they made this game, there's no way that it's not good. Because
Oh, that's a
Nintendo
road. That's a very
traditionally,
risky road to go down, my friend.
I mean, traditionally, how many first person or second person or party rather Nintendo games can you point to that aren't very good? I know what you're gonna say,
Whew.
so there's
Well,
there's
I don't
one,
know.
but
I
I
feel
mean,
like every major Nintendo franchise has at least one stinker.
yeah, but I think that the track record, especially the last couple of years, like especially since the Switch has come out, like they've just been on fire. It's like every game that they've released that they've touched has been awesome. So I feel like maybe I'm blind faith here, but I have no doubt that this game would be good. So for me, it's just an issue of like let's I mean, I think you're right. We need to create a reason for this game to exist. Like, why wouldn't Samus have her power suit? And then I just, I would hope that, again, kind of like you said, people aren't just like, oh, I want to play this Metroid game because the pretty girl is in it. Like,
Well, if
that kind of
someone
would
does, that's
lose.
fine, but that's not what I would play it, I guess.
And yeah, and that's fine. I wouldn't want them to lean to. You bring up Fire Emblem, and I love Fire Emblem. I love Awakening. I love Three Houses. I love Shadow Dragon. Like I like the old school Fire Emblems, but like as you can see with the newer Fire Emblem games, they lean into what is the term called that people use? Like for a wife. I
Waifus?
think it's called a wife.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they lean into that a lot. And
Right.
I wouldn't want to see something comparable to that if a Zero Suit Samus game came in. Like I wouldn't want to see any of those like cheesy shots
You don't
of
want to date
like
Ridley, man? Because, hey, that was a lot of. I would love to. Ridley would be my waifu.
I mean, I'm sure he's a nice guy.
Well,
I
I
wouldn't
don't know.
say
I
no
feel
if
like
he
he's
asked me
really
out.
he'll put food on the table. That's for sure. So
Well, there you
stable
go.
household.
He could probably fly you around places too. That'd actually be
Exactly.
pretty cool.
There's a lot of utility.
That's a nice date right there. Yeah, no, I guess you nailed it on the head though. Like it's I would play it. I don't think I guess now that we've kind of talked about it, I don't think it would be so successful that it would kind of shift the focus of the Metroid series. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad we did talk about it because there's a lot of meat on the bone, and it was super interesting to me. And like, it's interesting because I don't think that it's out of the realm of possibility. I actually think that like this could happen in some form or fashion in the next couple of years here, especially if Metroid Prime 4 comes out and is a huge hit,
Well,
which I think that it will be.
yeah. I mean, look, if they release Metroid Prime 4, it's great, whatever, and then they're like, all right, let's do Metroid 5. They do that, and now I have those two games. If they want to be like, hey, we're making Zero Suit Samus story, I'm like, hey, go for it. Though I would like a Metroid Prime Hunters too, but hey, go for it. Hey, I would like a Metroid Prime Pinball. That's another thing where I'm like, but there are other games that I kind of would almost want more rather than that. But again, as long as I have the Metroid I'm still looking forward to and haven't gotten yet, yeah, I would love to see them experiment a little more with the series. I would love to see them kind of modernize some stuff or take put it in a more modern genre or a different kind of thing, something stealthy, something that builds on what Zero Mission did. Um, and inherently, I don't think it's a bad idea as long as it makes sense, as long as the reasoning is not stupid. Sure, why not? That being said, though, I really cannot agree with you. There are, I feel like, tons, just as many ways I think they can make it good. I think there are just as many, if not more, ways that they can make it bad. So, it's kind of like, it's like gambler's fallacy, man. Like, it's hitting hot, and then like, oh, how could they mess it up? Like, they're hitting, like, everything on the Switch is gold. Like, how could they mess it up? Until it's not, until it's not gold. So, we'll see. I don't think they would truly butcher it. Hopefully they've learned from the past, but again, I'm never faithful until I've played it and it's in my hands and I truly know for myself.
Well, we hope that we were hitting it hot on this episode. This was a really interesting topic, and I'm glad that we got to talk about it. I was and looking forward to seeing everyone else's perspective and insights onto, would you want a Zero Suit Samus game to exist? If you did, what kind of game would it be? And all of the interesting questions that we posed in this episode, we want to hear it all. Tweet at us at Omega Metroid Pod and let us know what you think. Dak, I'm glad that we talked about this because a lot of really interesting questions, I think, and a lot of different ways that this could go.
Oh, for sure. Actually, this is the first time I've talked about this topic in particular. I don't think I've ever talked about whether or not I've wanted or anyone wanting a Zero Suit starring game. So this was something. Yeah, this was definitely something interesting to think about and talk about because it's not something I've actually really committed time to like I really thought about I actually don't know would I want this, would I not want this. So yeah, this was that's why I'm liking this. This is topics that I love to talk about Metroid, but some stuff like this I haven't actually talked about too much. This is something that doesn't come up often for me, so it's great to kind of flesh it out a bit.
100%. So yeah, that's going to do it for us for this episode of the Omega Metroid podcast. Of course, if you want to talk to us about some of our thoughts, you can find us at Twitter. I am at Spiteri316. Dak is at the Rapture _. Of course, we want you to head over to Podbean, iTunes, like and subscribe to the Omega Metroid podcast. Leave us a 5-star review if you think we have earned it. And if you got a Metroid fan in your life, you need to tell them about this podcast, where they can go to get their Metroid fix, and maybe they have not thought about a topic like this before and can now have some food for thought for their everyday life. Until next time, guys, that's going to do it for us. We're out of here, and thank you for listening.